Well, you're welcome back. Let's get in touch now with Bishop Matthew Kukah, who joins us live on Skype. If you can hear us now, would like you to get your perspective at this time. A lot of people are looking for the message in this mess. They're looking for Christ in this crisis. And what would you be saying to them now? Okay, appears he's not ready. So let's take you to the northern part of the country where Easter was also celebrated and see, what happened. We've shown you Lagos. Let's see what happened in that region.
These walls. Lagos, Nigeria's economic nerve center and the country's epicenter of COVID-19, has been on lockdown for more than a week. And these huge disruptions caused by these efforts of government to contain the spread of the virus is evident on the highways. But malls, parks, eateries and other fun spots have rarely looked this way, especially during the holidays. These parks are usually the playgrounds for children during this period. They are locked and currently not in business. One of them is even a temporary center for COVID-19 briefing. Water recreation communities are also getting hit. We visited the Legushi, one of the fun spots that would have been crowded on a day like this. The business is in total shutdown and Easter is not the same for them as well.
If we allow people to come in, we will not be able to control our people because they will tell you they pay in, they have to do this, they have to gather. So instead of allowing them to come in like that, we just shut down the beach so that we will not have problem through the government.
Everywhere is so dry. There's no one, even gathering of 10 or 2 or even of 4 is not gathered here, you understand?
All right, welcome back. Well, the Skype connection not working this morning. So one way or the other, we have to let this happen. So we do have him on the line from Sokoto this morning. Well, good morning, Bishop. We're about to make this happen so that at least you could get your messages out there. Well, we're talking about Easter, this period of Easter, quite completely different from what we've had clearly previously. So I was asking, do you think that the messages of Easter in this period will resonate more, perhaps much more than it has previously?
Well, absolutely, absolutely. And happy Easter to you, Chamberlain, and everybody.
Thank you, sir. Happy Easter to you too.
Yes, I think everybody, from atheists to people who have no connection with Christianity or any faith at all, I call this moment a moment in which God has summoned everybody to prayer. Now, whether you want to listen or not, everyone is literally in an attention mode. So, first of all, this is Easter like no other. And everything in life has changed completely. The way we talk, the way we walk, the way we behave. And I think that the real challenge for us now is to go back to, like I said in my Easter message, the title of my Easter message was that the empty churches and the empty tomb are actually a metaphor for the period that we are in. And for us as Christians, first of all, this resets the template of history in the sense that this is what Christianity was all about anyway. That before Christ, everything that happened was either before Christ or after Christ. And I joke now that going forward, most people will remember events in history now as before Corona or after Corona. I think the real challenge is whether we are prepared to take the lessons. I think all of us are in agreement that so much has changed dramatically and things will remain permanently in a state of change. I think the real challenge is how we all connect to various dimensions of our lives after this tragedy is over.
You also did say that the crisis, this pandemic contains an opportunity. Talk to us about that.
Well, for us, and I think, for us as Christians and life in general, even communist China that has claims no faith, did say that every danger, possesses internally an opportunity. And as you see, if you look at the history of plagues, even going way back, the first 100 years or 200 years of Christianity, you see that in every plague and every pandemic, the world has always come out completely different with new lessons. And then, of course, time passes, and then we all begin to go back to our old ways all over again. First of all, there is a collective feeling of vulnerability. It's no longer now a question of how many private planes you have. It's not a question of how much money you have. It's not a question of status. You can be president. You can be a beggar on the street. You can go to London. You can go to New York. You can go to Paris. You can go anywhere, including stepping out. So if there is a sense in which, this event has actually leveled everybody and we're all on one plane. Now, whether that makes us humble, that's the first lesson that I think we should all take away. And secondly, and closely related to that, is the whole notion of, especially in places like Africa, Nigeria in particular, where people in public office have just taken greed to a completely new level altogether. Now suddenly all these criminals and bandits who have stolen our money using public office and hiding the money abroad can actually not probably access those resources. And some of them, unfortunately, right across the world may never be able to access their money in the safe havens where they have been kept. Now, it teaches us a lesson about distribution of resources. It teaches us a lesson about being there for one another. And these lessons preceded Christ, because our whole sense of common humanity, even among the animal kingdom, you see that concern for one another is what has always held societies together. And thirdly, is the whole question of the mistaken notion that development means infrastructure. Now, every form of development is only important in relation to how it improves the quality of life of ordinary citizens. So, and I've said it severally, and if you remember, way back in August in 2015, when I spoke to you, on channels, and the heavens literally came down. The point I raised was we need to be able to have a sense of national cohesion, a sense of togetherness, something the Constitution refers to as a sense of belonging. Now, I think that if in our humility, we all now begin to realize our collective vulnerability, that it's not status, it's not class, it's not privilege, it's not prince, it's not bishop, it's not status, it's not office, then we can become more respectful and treat other people and behave in a way, a manner that God meant his children to behave. And then finally, there are quite a lot of lessons, but finally, it's just to make the point again that we are paying the price for technology, and that globalization. These are some of the benefits. Let me use that word. Now we're facing, we all were carried away by the human inventions, aeroplanes that made our journeys easier, technology, human movement, and so on and so forth. I'm sure you know that had this happened, had the coronavirus erupted in China some 30 years ago, the Chinese would have probably fought that disease and finished without anybody knowing from here in Nigeria. Up till perhaps about 10 or more years ago, very few people ever went to China. It was so distant. In Islam, the Holy Prophet of Islam says people should seek knowledge, even if it took them to China, because China was considered the remote end of the world. Suddenly, China became so close. Now, it's just a question of understanding that this evidence of development has also come with its own crisis. And it raises the question of the kind of moral choices that we have to make. In front of technology, that technology should, in its best form, only be useful to the extent that it serves to improve the quality of life of God's children.
Now, from where you sit, from your standpoint in our nation now, how serious would you say the fault lines are, given our experience in fighting this coronavirus disease?
First of all, let me commend our President Kekere, which is our governor in Lagos. I call him President Kekere because I think he deserves commendation in the way that he has handled this crisis. And I think also I commend the members of the Presidential Task Force, who have also brought a lot of passion, but also a lot of expertise to their jobs. But again, it would be a great mistake for us to see this as something that the government will do and can do for us. Moments of this kind of crisis, really, these are the kind of moments that make leaders stand out, whether it's Abraham Lincoln, whether it's Churchill, all through history. And if people take very seriously the nature of the responsibilities that have been entrusted into them and have a sense of humility that, one, they don't know everything, then the first challenge is for us to see this as a fight that everybody must be involved in. Unfortunately for us in Nigeria, everything is always politics. And so it will be a terrible mistake if the opposition, or if we see this as only a battle to be fought by the APC-led government. This is not about Buhari. Buhari is just accidentally where he is. It's not about him. Yes, he has the leadership to offer. But in the final analysis, This project will stand or fall depending on how ordinary Nigerians feel a sense of belonging in participating in the process. Unfortunately, going forward, we are a very cynical nation, and of course, Nigerians have earned the right to be cynical because they've been so badly treated. They've been so traumatized by leadership. So it is almost a right earned by ordinary Nigerians to be cynical about the promises of government. So the first thing to say is that we have ordinary citizens who don't trust their government. And I'm not talking here about APC government or about Buhari. Cynicism has always been with us, beginning with the military. So unfortunately, if the leaders don't earn the trust of their people, perhaps this crisis also offers us an opportunity, for people to have a sense of humility in the way they treat our people and in the way they treat the responsibility that has been entrusted to them. And here we are focusing on the economics of this whole debate, which is that, okay, oil prices are falling. Guess what? I mean, whether oil prices have risen or fallen in Nigeria has made no difference, absolutely very little difference to the lives of ordinary Nigerians. Let's not make a mistake about that. That we have had a country in which whether rain or sunshine, it has always meant the same thing for ordinary Nigerians. The welfare of Nigerians has never improved as a result of oil prices going to $100, or even if they went to $1,000. It is not likely that the appetite and the greed of those who govern us will necessarily be mitigated. So even the little that we have, it is necessary at this point in time for us to figure out how we're going to manage these resources. And the resources are not necessarily, when we talk of resources in Nigeria, everybody's mind goes to money. But unless we have a situation in which we place the ordinary person, no matter their status, gender, social class, at the center of everything that happens, they can be running around in circles.
All right.
But I think,
speaking about the cynics, pardon me to butt in there. For those listening, they may just say, look, those people who you say have been badly beaten, the little or no faith in government, they play an equally important component in whether or not we succeed or fail in our approach to tackling COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in the country here. But then there are some people who also haven't listened to or heard that part of your submissions, wherein they don't believe, they're thinking, does that then justify why you have some group of persons who will even consider, or let alone voice out their opinion, saying they don't believe any such thing as COVID-19?
Well, the truth of the matter is that we are in Africa, and sometimes I used to say to people in Africa, we sometimes thank God for witchcraft, because even the issues the lives that we lose from lack of medical services in the rural parts of Nigeria, maternal mortality, infant mortality, people dying of TB, people dying of all kinds of things, the villagers ascribe it to witchcraft, not to bad governance. So we are living in a rather mystified environment where ignorance is really what determines how people behave. I've been very shocked myself by the kind of comments that people have continued to make. All these conspiracy theories that have been woven around what came out of which laboratory and what the Chinese are trying to do and how everybody else is trying to wipe us out. But I said to myself, look, I mean, what will the Chinese or anybody for that matter benefit by wiping us out? I think it is in their interest that we stay, because we are here laboring for them anyway through their oil companies and multinational corporations. So the real challenge for me is not so much, a question of, how we see all these things. It is that the point I'm making is that the cynics, it is important that government becomes sufficiently humble to realize that, one, it doesn't have all the answers. The cynicism is bred by the fact that we are running a government in Nigeria that has a very poor record of recruitment of people to public life. In the last 30 or so years, this country has taken its attention completely away from intellectualism and the contribution of the intellectual class. The result is that for the last over 20 or 30 years now, there's hardly any year we've not had strikes in the universities. Elsewhere, in China, Europe, and America, these crises are going to be resolved largely by what happens in our universities, in our laboratories, and so on and so forth. But all this is happening at a time when all we hear about the universities now is ASU is on strike, ASU is not on strike, ASU is on strike, ASU is not on strike. So for me, a society that does not privilege intellectualism denies itself a diagnostic approach to governance. In which case, we have good people who are doing horribly bad things out of ignorance. So if you have a situation where people are recruited and assigned positions on basis of religious affinity, ethnic affinity, social affinity, connections, and so on and so forth, you will end up with good men and good women struggling to do their best, but their best will hardly ever be good enough for a complex country like Nigeria. So for me, going forward, this is not something that is the result of witchcraft or sorcery. This is pure science. And whether we accept it or not, it is here with us. There's very little we can do about it. To pretend otherwise would be to try and cover the sun with our hands. So it's here. It depends on the quality of choices that we're going to make out of it.
Then we'll go to break and we'll come back to you and get your concluding thoughts in just a moment. Just stay with us. Welcome back. Our concluding moments now with Bishop Kukah. Kai, do you have a question for me?
Yes. I remember he talked about a category of people, the cynics, people that are cynical about COVID-19, about government, generally the trust deficit. But there's another category of people, Bishop, people that are wondering if God has abandoned his people right now. They're wondering, with all this pandemic, where is God in all of this? Is God quiet? Is he silent? What do you have to say to those people?
Well, look, thank you very much, Kyle. It's really good to talk to you. There have been a lot of historical, theological postulations as to where God is and how do we know when God is around and so on and so forth. God is God. We have human ways of trying to approach him, but of course our human language can never exhaust who God is. The mistake we tend to make is that somehow God is a first aid box that we can summon when we're in a crisis. He'll come and solve our problems and go away. And of course, the country like Nigeria has fertile ground for all that because of the prevailing socioeconomic situations we are in. This is why you find the Pentecostal, the prosperity message is booming and booming and booming because, of course, nobody asks the philosophical question, can you really prosper in an environment of such massive poverty? So it's the question of where God is. It's a legitimate question. Remember that even Jesus Christ, as he hung on the cross, said, my God, why have you forsaken me? These are questions that Christians and believers have a right to ask. Literally, the book of Job, people say Job was a patient man. Job wasn't a patient man if you read the book of Job very carefully. Because Job tries to address the question, I am a righteous man. You yourself testify to that. Why am I suffering? So the whole question of why suffering exists in the world, it's not a simple question for us to answer, but it is not outside the scheme of the way God has organized the world. So your relative drops dead, you are crying somewhere, and the coffin maker is rejoicing because he has an opportunity to pay his child's school fees. You just had a flat tire on Third Mainland Bridge, you are thinking of figuring out what to do. The mechanic jumps in joy because God has offered something for him to be able to pay his rent. Now, so God is not in the business of, pacifying some, or just appearing to pacify us and then suddenly going away. Indeed, the book of Job and Scripture tells us very clearly that, and this is again a great message of Easter, that amidst the uncertainty, amidst the fears, amidst the anxiety, amidst the troubles of this world, that nothing is outside the supreme power of God, the one, as Scripture says, that has the all-seeing eyes. So it's not, even within this whole perspective, the real challenge is not that it is happening, but how do we cope with it? And so really, if you're looking for a spiritual solution that is short-sighted, well, again, there are a lot of opportunists who are offering that message by pretending that, somehow we can pray coronavirus away. No, we won't pray it away because it's here with us. But God is going to talk to us through the scientists, people in the lab, and that is why I think all our medical personnel, the medical doctors across Nigeria, across the world, all the people involved are people we are praying for almost every day because they are now more important than the army. They are, to a great extent, perhaps, a substitute, let me put it that way, for other categories of our lives. So it is that even in their work, God is also bringing healing. You often see this sign in many hospitals, that the doctor is humble enough to say we treat, but God heals. So I think that we shouldn't see this as a punishment from God. That is not, God doesn't punish, they'll go around with a cane punishing those that he's displeased with.
What must we as a nation take away from this Many people have said that, such crisis is an opportunity. You have also written about it. It's a blessing in disguise. What must we take away from this crisis? What is it that this crisis must not leave us the same as?
It must not leave us so preoccupied with the things that really don't matter. And the things that don't matter, in which that Nigerians are investing their energy and their power and their prayer and everything else, is this whole question of everybody is praying to become rich and to become prosperous. And that people have put religion, put their moral conviction, put their legacy in jeopardy because of the obsession with accumulation. Now, we have spent how many years? 1992, 1946, 1951, 1954, 1960, 2005 to 2014, trying to amend the constitution. Had this lockdown not happened, our National Assembly members would have been running crisscrossing Nigeria, saying that they want to hear from us how to make a constitution. They did the same in the Seventh Assembly. So it is that we are still struggling for how to make life live for our people. If we were to take anything away from this whole thing at all, it is that we remain very, very vulnerable. I tell people that, when people call me and they say, what is happening in Sokoto? I say, well, this is one of those moments that I'm really very happy to be in Sokoto. I'm happy to be here. But since they say that coronavirus is afraid of heat, we are registering some of the highest degrees of heat here in Sokoto. So prayerfully and happily, it may not come to us. But on a more serious note, it is to say that if there is anything we need by the end of this to have put a safety net that can ensure that our people are healthy, that can ensure that our people are knowledgeable, that can ensure that our people are less vulnerable. Because all we are saying is, if this thing really and truly hits us, it will be very difficult for us to manage. We just don't have the capacity. So if anything at all, this has exposed the severe weakness of the social infrastructure that we have in this country. So going forward, I think that we need a bit of imagination and creativity to deal with the fact that should any of these kind of things happen again, we will not be caught, so unaware as we are, today.
Let me squeeze this in. I know we need to go on this, but just before we go, talk to us about this. I mean, speaking about picking up from where you left off, if you look at countries like Israel, Saudi Arabia, these are countries that have, huge impacts in terms of religion on Nigeria. But then there's this talk about when people are religious in this part of the world, they seem to abandon their intellect. How do we strike a balance to ensure that even in the midst of all of these, we still are able to think through and not just be dogmatic about certain things?
Look, it was Napoleon who said that it is religion that stops the poor from killing the rich. There is a sense in which, again, between that and Karl Marx, this is where the problem is with religion. Now, when religion becomes a drug for seducing people to a level of stupor, where we ascribe everything to the will of God, where we ascribe even our irresponsibility to the will of God. I will say, well, if I stole money and I wasn't caught, it means God must have approved of what I've done. What we require now is how to energize religion. And I think that I can say these are some of the things that have gotten me into trouble. Because I've also tried to argue that, look, I wouldn't have been as angry as I am if I weren't a Christian. Because I understand the fact that the essence of my gospel is Jesus said, I've come so that you may have life and have it to the full. I also know that Jesus said, I came to set the captive free, and so on and so forth. So I have a responsibility and I have a duty to go to the public space and to talk to those into whose hands we have entrusted the responsibility of looking after our welfare. To say that, no, this is where we are hurting. Of course, mistakenly, a lot of people tell you, oh, you don't like government, you don't like our government. I've had that a zillion times. I couldn't be bothered. But the point to make is that religion has become for us a huge excuse for irresponsibility, for lawlessness, and I think that there is a sense in which the Nigerian state itself has really not been able to address this whole question. That is why, the lecture I delivered at Ojukwu University in Anambra State, it is the point I was making, that we need an aggregate of irreducible minimums, such as the Americans had in 1776, that we subscribe to the fact that all of us are created equal. And it is not enough to say that. It is also to provide a platform for ensuring that this equality is actually, operationalized. So we are allowing religion too much of a latitude. If you have a law, if you say government says nobody should go out, unless I have a vital reason for going out, and I'm actually going out to administer the prayer to the sick, and I can prove that, I have no business going out. If I go out as a bishop, I ought to be arrested for breaking the law.
All right, then. All right, Bishop Kukah, we do appreciate your thoughts this morning. Thank you very much indeed. So that was Bishop Matthew Kukah.
Thank you.